She was walking alone at night, when a millionaire stopped his car and said, "You're coming with me." The city lights blurred around Elara as she walked, each street lamp casting long, lonely shadows that danced with her steps. It was past 10 on a Tuesday night, and the chill in the air bit at her exposed skin, a stark reminder that autumn was settling in. Hello friends, I'm Mia Trump. I hope you enjoy this story. Elara, at 28, was a graphic designer, and her days were a colorful blur of creative projects, but her evenings often ended in quiet solitude. She lived for her art, yet sometimes, especially on nights like these, a dull ache of loneliness settled in her chest. She pulled her worn cardigan tighter, wishing she hadn't missed the last bus. A 30-minute walk wasn't ideal after a long day hunched over a glowing screen, but a taxi felt like an unnecessary expense. The downtown area was still alive with the distant hum of traffic and the faint echo of music from bars, but her path led through quieter, tree-lined streets where old brownstones stood sentinel. Elara thought about the design brief she'd just finished, a vibrant logo for a new cafe. It had taken hours to perfect, but the satisfaction of seeing her vision come to life was a small victory. She often found more comfort in the precision of her work than in the unpredictable nature of human connections. Most of her college friends had moved away, chasing dreams in bigger cities or settling into family life. Elara sometimes wondered if she was missing a chapter in her own story, stuck on a page she'd already read. Lost in these thoughts, she almost didn't notice the sleek, black car that glided to a stop beside her. It was a luxury vehicle, the kind she usually only saw in magazines or parked outside fancy hotels. The window, tinted dark, silently lowered. A man's voice, deep and calm, cut through the quiet night. "You're coming with me." Elara froze. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She gripped the strap of her messenger bag, her knuckles white. This wasn't a joke. This wasn't a friendly offer. The voice held an undeniable authority, a quiet command that made her skin prickle. She looked at the man, his face partly obscured by shadow, but she could make out sharp, intelligent eyes and a strong jawline. He wasn't threatening, not exactly, but his words were. "Excuse me?" Elara managed, her voice barely a whisper. "I think you have the wrong person." "No, I don't," he replied, his gaze intense. "Elara Vance, isn't it? I need your help. Urgently." He knew her name. A shiver ran down her spine. "How do you know my name?" "There's no time for explanations," he said, his voice betraying a hint of desperation now. "My name is Julian Thorne. I'm a businessman, and I'm in a very difficult situation. You are the only person who can help me right now." Elara's mind raced. Julian Thorne. The name sounded vaguely familiar, like something she'd heard on the news or in a business magazine. He was a tech mogul, wasn't he? A young, incredibly successful entrepreneur known for his innovative, sometimes controversial, ventures. But why would he need her? "I don't understand," she said, backing away slightly. "I'm just walking home. I don't know you." "I know," he said, opening the passenger door. The interior light illuminated his face fully now. He was younger than she expected, perhaps early 30s, with dark, slightly tousled hair and an air of refined intensity. He looked stressed, his brow furrowed, but his eyes held a strange mix of urgency and genuine appeal. "Please, I wouldn't ask if it wasn't critical. Someone I need to impress, someone crucial to a major charity project, is expecting a very specific person, and that person isn't available. You, however, bear an uncanny resemblance to them. More than uncanny, actually. It's almost perfect." Elara stared at him, bewildered. "You want me to pretend to be someone else? For a few hours, at a private event? It's for a good cause, I promise. Millions are at stake for a children's hospital wing. Without this charade, it all falls apart." He paused, then added, "And I'll make it worth your while." More than worth your while. The absurdity of the situation was overwhelming. Her logical mind screamed no, this was insane. But something else, a tiny spark of curiosity, flickered within her. Her life was so meticulously planned, so predictable. This was anything but. "Who am I supposed to be?" she asked, a strange mix of fear and fascination in her voice. A faint smile touched his lips. "My cousin, a renowned art historian from Paris, who's known for her unique insights. Her name is Geneviève Dubois." Elara, a graphic designer who spent her evenings sketching superheroes and designing logos, was now supposed to be a Parisian art historian. The idea was so wild, so utterly out of her comfort zone, that it was almost exhilarating. "Okay," she heard herself say, surprising even herself, "but you owe me a full explanation, and a very large explanation." "Deal," Julian said, relief washing over his face. "Get in." The car was even more luxurious inside than it looked. Plush leather seats, ambient lighting, and a silence that swallowed the city noise. As they sped through the streets, Julian gave her the crash course. The event was a private dinner with a reclusive art collector, Madame Dubois, a woman known for her eccentricities and her deep pockets. Julian needed her investment for a new, innovative children's hospital wing that incorporated art therapy. The real Geneviève Dubois, his actual cousin, had been delayed by a sudden emergency, but Madame Dubois was notoriously punctual and easily offended by last-minute changes. "Geneviève is quite particular," Julian explained, glancing at her. "She has a very specific way of speaking, a certain flair. She's passionate about Renaissance art, particularly Italian frescoes, and she has a slight aversion to modern technology." Elara, who lived and breathed digital art and spent her weekends binge-watching sci-fi, felt a wave of panic. "I know nothing about Italian frescoes, or French accents." "Don't worry about the accent, just the enthusiasm," Julian reassured her. "I'll guide you, just nod, look thoughtful, and occasionally interject with magnifique or formidable." He handed her a tablet. "Here's a quick brief on Genevieve's recent discoveries and a few key artists, just enough to get you through the evening." As they pulled up to a grand, illuminated mansion, Elara felt a surge of nerves. The house was enormous, with manicured gardens and a fleet of expensive cars parked outside. This was a world far removed from her cozy apartment and late-night design sessions. Inside, the mansion was a museum in itself, filled with priceless art and antique furniture. Julian introduced her to Madame Dubois, a formidable woman with piercing eyes and an air of quiet authority. Elara, channeling every ounce of confidence she possessed, offered a polite bonsoir, Madame Dubois, trying to sound as sophisticated as possible. The dinner was a whirlwind of polite conversation, exquisite food, and terrifyingly specific questions about art history. Julian was a master at deflecting, subtly guiding the conversation, and interjecting with timely remarks that allowed Elara to nod sagely or offer a vague, "Ah, c'est une merveille." When a painting was discussed, she learned to speak in generalities, praising the emotional depth of a piece or the masterful brushwork, hoping no one would ask her to elaborate. At one point, Madame Dubois pointed to a large, vibrant abstract painting. "And what do you think of this piece, Geneviève?" "My latest acquisition." Elara's heart seized. Abstract art was her comfort zone, but she couldn't risk breaking character. She looked at Julian, who gave her a subtle nod. "Ah," Elara began, recalling a phrase from the tablet, "the raw, unbridled energy. It speaks to the soul, does it not? A true testament to the artist's inner turmoil." She hoped that sounded suitably profound. Madame Dubois' lips twitched into a small smile. "Indeed," she said, her eyes twinkling. "You truly understand art, my dear." A wave of relief washed over Elara. She had done it. She had survived. As the evening progressed, she found herself relaxing into the role, even enjoying the challenge. Julian, she realized, was not just a brilliant businessman but also incredibly charming and surprisingly kind. He made sure she was comfortable, subtly refilled her water glass, and even shared a quick, conspiratorial glance when Madame Dubois launched into a particularly long anecdote about a lost sculpture. By the time the dinner concluded, and Madame Dubois had, to Julian's immense relief, agreed to fund the hospital wing, Elara felt a strange sense of accomplishment. She had stepped into a completely foreign world, and, for a few hours, had become someone else. As Julian drove her back to her apartment, the silence in the car was different this time, a comfortable quiet, not the tense one from earlier. "I can't thank you enough, Elara," Julian said, pulling up to her building. "You were incredible. You truly saved the day." "It was an experience," Elara admitted, a small smile playing on her lips. "Definitely not how I expected my Tuesday night to go." "I know it was a lot to ask," he said, his eyes meeting hers, "but you handled it with such grace." and you're a surprisingly good improviser. Well, I design, so I guess I'm used to making things up as I go, she joked. Though usually with more pixels and less priceless art, they shared a laugh. There was a moment of hesitation, a lingering glance, before Elara opened the car door. Well, good luck with the hospital wing, Julian. Elara, he said, stopping her. I know this was unconventional, but I'd like to see you again. Not for a charade this time. Just, maybe dinner? Somewhere with no art collectors or ancient frescoes. Elara felt her face flush slightly. I'd like that, she said, a genuine smile spreading across her face. But I warn you, my knowledge of Renaissance art is now completely exhausted. Julian laughed. Good, because I'd much rather hear about your superheroes. The following week, Elara's office felt a little less mundane. The hum of her computer, the familiar scent of ink and paper, still filled her days, but now there was an undercurrent of excitement. She found herself sketching new designs with a renewed spark, her mind occasionally wandering to the man who had pulled her into a world of unexpected adventure. On Friday evening, a delivery arrived at her door, not flowers, but a beautifully wrapped box containing a rare first-edition graphic novel she had mentioned liking. Tucked inside was a small card. For the most authentic art historian I know. Dinner, 7 p.m. at the Sketchbook Cafe. No costumes required. Julian. Elara felt a warmth spread through her. She had spent years meticulously building her career, creating a stable, predictable life. But sometimes, as she was learning, the most extraordinary moments weren't planned. They arrived in a sleek black car, with a whispered command, and the courage to step into the unknown. Because in the end, it wasn't just about the big, grand gestures, but the willingness to open your heart when life decided to take an unexpected turn.